Joining us on Talking Sense today, Moeletsi Mbeki. Hello, Mr. Mbeki. Great to have you on.
Wonderful to be on your show.
Well, I think let's start with a question that takes you all the way back, and it's a question about your family, because you are from probably one of South Africa's most extraordinary families, and your family has managed to produce a number of extraordinary people. And so, what happened that you all seem to become such cerebral, educated, thoughtful, and important people?
Well, I don't know if we are any of those things. Yes, we've been involved, my family has been involved in South African politics since the middle of the 19th century.
Mm,
So that is essentially our involvement with the country, with the politics of the country.
mm,
We're involved with the British in the middle of the 19th century.
yeah,
We are from the Eastern Cape, and that was the center of the storm in the development of South Africa
yeah,
for, for over 100 years.
for sure.
So we were part of the players in the center of that storm. So that's why we are still in the center of the storm. But the storm has now moved to Gauteng,
Yes.
away from the Eastern Cape, but we are still in the center of the storm.
But I do want to ask you though on that it isn't every family that manages to produce like the kind of legacy that your father, your brother, and yourself have managed to produce. So like, what is it? Was there something special you think in your upbringing, something that compelled you all to be? You said you were in the center of the storm, but that doesn't mean that you were destined to have gone down the path that you do. So is there something different maybe that you think happened there, or is it just a kind of case of right place, right time?
Yes, I think is the right place, right time.
Okay.
It's just that the South African problem has been unfolding
Mhm.
for over 150 years. Let's
Yes.
say, if we take it from, let me say, from the discovery of the diamonds,
Yes.
that's when new South Africa started. Before the discovery of diamonds, you had slave South Africa,
Yes.
so the age of slavery in South Africa, which ended in 1838.
Mm.
But soon after, the mining
Yes.
era of South Africa started. So we have been part of the mining era of South Africa. By some coincidence, the
Yeah.
mining era is still going on.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Although I'm sure that there must be something special about your family, but we don't have to. I won't
Yeah, I
continue to
don't.
press you on that. Um, So talking about you mentioned that we're in the mining era of South Africa, and so maybe can you spell out to us how your read of South Africa since our transition to democracy? Where do you think South Africa is currently at, and how do you think it's got here?
Okay, what gets forgotten, what gets overlooked in our discussion, especially after 1994, is who took over power in 1994.
Mm,
Everybody will tell you the ANC, but who does the ANC represent? A- And then they will tell you, oh, it represents black people. But that's not really the answer.
yeah.
Who took over power in 1994 was primarily the African middle class in alliance with organized labor. That's who took power in 1994.
Very interesting.
And the African middle class is made up of professionals, uh, but professionals who have no property.
Mm,
The African middle class, like my family, emerged in the middle of the 19th century.
mm,
But when it emerged, it had property. It owned land.
yes.
The British they were allies of the British.
Mm,
So the British were very keen for them to become Christians, to become westernized, to become landowners. so that they were like the British
Yes.
settlers,
Yes. Yes.
the African middle class. And in the 19th century, the African middle class, especially in the Cape and in Natal, started to grow from peasant agriculture
Mm.
to becoming landowners in the capitalist economy of that era.
Yes.
And the British set up schools for them. Lovedale is one of the most famous in the Eastern Cape. Adams College in Natal was another one of the famous schools for this new emerging middle class.
Yes.
In the 20th century, after the Anglo-Boer War, the British changed and handed power to the Afrikaner nationalists, who, of course, were competitors with the African middle class.
Yes.
For power, we had two elites in South Africa after the Anglo-Boer War. So the British chose to hand power over to the Afrikaner elite, who were mainly landowners, some farmers, but they were not rich or anything like that. So what happened in 94 is that the African elite took over. So the African middle class took over political control of the state in South Africa.
Yes.
And they have been running the state for their benefit. Obviously, that's what they had been fighting for.
Yes.
So the beneficiaries, if you look at the policies of the last 30 years, have been to advance the interests of the African middle class. First, through the civil service and state employment.
Yes.
Because they own no land, so they use the state for their self-enrichment. So that's what has been happening in South Africa. The state has been ballooning.
Yes.
With this new elite, who are the civil servants.
Yeah.
And it has also been paying a huge amount of money because the African middle class, their role model for a standard of living are the whites.
Yes.
So they want to have the same standard of living. But because they don't have businesses, they have used the state to acquire that standard of living. So South Africa has a very expensive state.
Yes.
But what makes it expensive is the salaries. It's not investment, it's the salaries.
Yes.
And then because they had an alliance with organized labor, they have then passed laws which favor organized labor.
Yeah.
So that's what has been happening in the last 30 years.
And on the kind of point of salaries, I think just an example that draws out exactly what you're saying is I was doing some research on our military budget not so long ago, and I found that over 80% of our military's budget is spent on salaries.
Yeah.
We have less than 20% to fund the entire rest of our. No, what then it's kind of like no wonder, therefore, that we have when we deploy in the Congo, we have helicopters that won't work and troops that get abandoned because there's no money for the things that you actually need to function. And it seems like this is a kind of micro example of a wider phenomenon that seems to have affected a lot of the state's organs. Does that seem correct to you?
Oh, absolutely. If you look at our railways,
Yeah.
South Africa in 1994 had a functioning railway system. But because it's state-owned, the assets of the railway got turned around into salaries for the new middle class who are allegedly running the railways. The consequence is there was no maintenance of railways. Today, the private sector, private companies, are having to literally finance the maintenance of the railways through this arrangement between the private sector and government.
Yes.
But because the African middle class who run the state have used the assets of the railways, the capital of the railways, for their own salaries.
Yes. Yes.
So the army is a good illustration of this. Most of the expenditure is salaries, of the upper echelons in
Yes.
reality
Yeah,
of the army.
exactly.
It's not the rank and file, it's the upper echelons.
Yeah, and another, just a quick example. I think that as a proportion in our army, I think we have 4 times more generals than the U.S. Army,
Yeah.
which kind of shows how kind of perverted the systems have become as this has been entrenched. But on that point, so we've kind of laid out that what we've developed is the state that's overburdened as a means of providing to this upcoming the create and then provide for the African middle class. But what do you think were the kind of key moments and the big decisions that have brought us to this point? Because it didn't necessarily look like it would always be the case. And I'm specifically thinking here, at the common sense, we have an editorial line that we need to view South Africa as a kind of 2 separate stories. There's the 1994 to 2007, 2008 South Africa, and then there's the 2008 to kind of 2024 South Africa, and now we're in a new era. But that in that first period, it did look as though we might, given the kind of growth rates, the rates of internal investment, it looked as though an honest effort was being put into trying to generate enough of a private sector growth to kind of bring in create a black middle class that existed in both the private and the public sector. So do you think that that's a fair assessment? And then what do you think were the key moments that meant that we've kind of entrenched this system you've laid out?
No, I don't think there was a difference there. Many people think there was a difference, and then they say Zuma was the culprit
Mm.
who ruined this whole. No, after 1994, first the sanctions were removed.
Yes.
The South African economy for decades had been laboring under sanctions. So once you remove the sanctions, it was bound to grow.
Sure.
So that was point number one. Point number two was that there was so much goodwill after the settlement, after not just goodwill among South Africans, but between South Africa and the rest of the world.
Yes.
So, and then the third part was China, China was in the middle of the industrializing.
Yes.
So you had a commodity boom, which of course South Africa is a big mining economy.
Yes.
So you had a commodity boom. And then on top of that, South Africa won the staging of the FIFA World Cup.
Yes.
Which then required refurbishment of the infrastructure of the country under the supervision of FIFA. So the airports had to be refurbished, a new railway line had to be built, the highways had to be rehabilitated. So the economy was booming because of all these factors.
Yes.
It didn't change the driver behind it.
Okay.
The middle class was still there.
Yes.
But those started to run out of steam with the financial crisis, the global financial crisis now, after 2008, I think, somewhere there, which unfortunately coincided with Jacob Zuma's presidency. But I think irrespective of who was president, it was still going to run out of steam.
So you don't think that that moment in Polokwane where your brother gets kind of edged out by Jacob Zuma, and the kind of maybe this is an apocryphal quote, but the people that your brother had warned about, the ultra leftists inside of the organization and the ANC, and that the sea change that came about with Zuma in the ANC, you don't think attribute that as a kind of important moment?
No, it's not an important moment.
That's so fascinating.
I don't think it was an important turning point.
So
we ran out of the fat.
Yes.
That had accumulated during the years of isolation of South Africa. And also remember, it was during the years in which South Africa built up a massive military industries.
Yes, yes.
So it had lots of capabilities in the economy.
Yeah.
So all those capabilities carried the country forward from 1994 for a decade, let's say, a bit over a decade.
Yes. And then it just kind of at petered out, and so
Yeah,
you think.
because then you once that fat ran out, you have to invest,
Yes.
but they were not investing.
Okay, yeah, I can see. Okay, that's fascinating. I mean, I think you are probably the first very serious person I've spoken to who doesn't put that like kind of immense weight on the change that happens in Polokwane. And so, and but to pull us back to the conversation about today, so we're now in a moment in which it doesn't there's no clear political kind of leader in the country. With the ANC has suffered last year its worst result, losing more of vote share than it had in all previous elections combined. But that vote share seems to have been fractured out into primarily eaten up by MK, who is kind of offshoot of the liberation movement, and there hasn't been something new that's risen up to take its place. So where do you think South Africa is kind of currently in the political realm and the in terms of the kind of contestation between the parties and between the kind of political ideas that exist in the country?
Okay, South Africa has really, for the past 140 years, let's say, has had one political idea,
Mm,
which was nationalism.
yeah.
You had the nationalism of the Afrikaners, which put them in conflict with the British.
Yes.
And then you had the nationalism of the Africans, which put them in conflict with the Afrikaner nationalists. But the idea of South Africa, I would say for the last 130 years or more, let's say since the 1880s, let's
Mm,
put it that, especially with the start of the gold mining industry.
yeah.
That's where the turning point actually is in the history of South Africa,
Yeah. Yeah.
is the establishment of the gold mining industry. Uh, Remember, once the gold mining industry started, the mining companies got entrenched and established with Cecil Rhodes and his buddies, they wanted to control the country. So
Yes.
you got the first effort to change the political control of the country,
Mm,
to get the mining owners to control the country.
mm,
And that led to the Jameson raid.
yes.
That was the first. When the Jameson raid failed, they then persuaded the British government to get rid of the of Paul Kruger and of the Boer republics,
Mm,
which was successfully done with the Peace of Vereeniging in 1902. Right,
yes.
so
Yes.
they were crushed. The Boer republics were crushed.
Mhm,
So the British established South Africa,
yes. Yes.
but they handed over in 1910 to the Afrikaner nationalists.
Mm,
So since then, we've had two parties in power in South Africa, essentially, the National Party and the ANC. That, that's been how this country has been operating.
and it's two sides of, you say, the same coin.
Yeah, it's two sides of the same coin. It's a movement. Nationalists are movements of grievance.
Yes.
Their grievance against the British. The Afrikaners had the big grievance against the British for destroying the Boer republics and taking over the control of the mineral resources.
Hmm.
The African elite had their grievance against the British
Hmm.
for settling without them in 1909.
Yes. Yes.
But the British left all this behind and said, "You guys sort out the mess between the two of you."
Okay. And in terms of, so what, and your read of the last year's election result, what's
Well,
happening there?
well in last year's, the middle class took power, as I say, in the African middle class took power in 1994.
Mm.
And to me, their biggest mistake was to focus on developing the middle class
Yes.
instead of developing the black masses,
Yes.
African, colored, Indian, poor,
Yeah.
and working class. They decided to focus on developing the welfare of the African middle class
Mm.
through two policies: black economic empowerment and affirmative action in the state. Black economic empowerment in the private sector
Mm-hmm.
and affirmative action in the public sector.
Mm.
So initially they sold this strategy as being a strategy for advancement of all the black people. But the colors and the Indians soon realized that no, we are left out of this.
Yeah.
So that's why they joined the DA.
Yes.
And because they had been with the Africans since
Yeah.
the 50s, fighting together. You know, the Defiance campaign in 1952
Mm-hmm.
was led by an Indian called Yusuf Kachalia
Yes.
and an African called Nelson Mandela working together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the ANC and the Transvaal and the Natal Indian Congress were partners from the early 50s,
Yes.
right up until black economic empowerment was implemented, when then the Indians were left out and the colors were left out and the whites who supported the ANC were left out. So they advanced the African middle class.
Yeah.
And that the culmination of this was going to be, so they alienated first the colored population, the Indian population, the white population, and now they've alienated the mass of the African population.
Yeah.
So that's why they lost power. And that's why they can never get power back.
Yeah, that one kind of once that so you're saying that once the decision has been taken to leave the movement, it's almost impossible to bring people back in.
Very difficult, very difficult.
And do you think something like, maybe President Ramaphosa living up to what we think might be his completely fabricated reputation of this great reformer, if he actually does live up to this reputation and begins to implement a series of reforms that unlocks the potential for the poor black masses to enter into the workforce, to start to get a foot onto the economic ladder, is that something that might save the ANC, go so far as to save the ANC, or is the idea just kind of dead now?
No, that won't happen. It can't happen, because for it to happen, you have to lower the consumption level of the African middle class.
Yeah.
The South African state, as you have observed yourself, is hugely bloated with the African middle class. So if you're going to now focus resources into, for example, repairing the aircraft,
Yes.
but that's investment,
Yeah.
which means you have to cut off the consumption of the African middle class, and they will never agree to it.
Yes.
So that's where we're sitting as a country. The IMF did a study a few years ago of remuneration of the public sector in South Africa. It's probably the highest in the world as a percentage of gross domestic product.
Jeepers. Yeah.
So, and that is blocking investment. It's a huge obstacle to investment. It's nearly 17% of GDP goes to the salaries of the public service.
17%.
17%. Similar countries, middle income countries like Thailand, like Chile in South America, is 6 or 7%. So our public service is a massive drain on the economy of the country. But the holders of political power, which are the African middle class, despite their alliance with the DA, and I'm not quite sure what the DA calls itself anyway, the African middle class policies are the policies in place. So if we want to uplift the rest of the population, you have a zero-sum game between the consumption of the African middle class and the upliftment of the economy of the country.
Yes.
And because the middle class control the political power, they will carry on suppressing the growth of the economy.
Okay, so and so it's because one of the theories that we kind of operate on in the common sense or what we believe about the ANC is that it's locked itself into a position in which it's unable to reform because of the kind of leadership structure that it has, a 100 plus person essentially board that has to come to a consensus in order to turn the ship. But you are adding another layer, which is that the people that ensure that the ANC holds on to power, their base, are determined in the ANC maintaining course because that ensures that they get to continue to enjoy the life that they do.
Yeah,
Okay, and
absolutely.
so the problem it is not just a top down
No,
problem.
no, it's not leadership. It's a structural
Yeah,
issue, which is political power in the hands of a middle class that owns no assets and then uses the state for its consumption.
yeah,
If you compare the state of South Africa under the ANC and the state of South Africa under the National Party, you can see the difference.
mm,
The National Party were landowners
yes,
primarily. Okay, they had some other businesses, but their core base were farmers. So they used their power control of the state to develop agriculture.
mm,
And they made their money out of being farmers.
yes,
You know, the Afrikaner political elite were also farmers.
mm, mm,
So in order for their farms to be profitable, they had to invest in infrastructure. They had to invest in railways. They had to invest in silos. They had to invest in controlling cheap labor because they decided to use cheap labor. So they had this massive state machinery to control the cheap labor and suppress the consumption
yes,
of the African population. So they invested in that, but they funded their consumption through their assets, which were farms, and then businesses as the economy diversified,
mm,
especially after the Second World War. It's very different with the African elite.
mm,
They don't have those farms, so they have no incentive to invest
yes.
to invest in infrastructure, to invest in all the things you need to invest in if you are going to grow an economy. So that if you look, for example, at our human capital index,
Mm,
the World Bank produces, South Africa is like number 132 out of 169 countries in the human cap because there's no investment in education,
yeah.
in the skills of the masses. But the ruling elite doesn't need skilled labor.
No. Yeah.
it taxes the production sector, and where the sector gets its labor from, that's its own lookout.
Mm. And on that point of the ANC and its incentive structures and kind of why that produces lack of investment, do you think that there's also a case here in which there's been a kind of too close relationship between big business in South Africa and the ANC, and they've managed to get most of their incentives to align quite nicely with each other because the ANC, with some of its more kind of leftist ideological roots, doesn't necessarily enjoy a free market, and that helps big corporates because they don't necessarily enjoy competition and free and open and people being able to challenge their dominance. And so, is this a case in which the kind of elites in business and the elites in politics have joined together in order to entrench a system that benefits them both?
Yes, absolutely. You know, black economic empowerment was never ANC policy.
Mm.
The ANC during the struggle against apartheid was a multiracial organization.
Yeah.
So it couldn't come up with a policy that favored one race or another
Mm.
because it was a multiracial organization. Black economic empowerment was handed over as a policy largely from Sanlam, which was from the National Party,
Yes.
because they saw that as a way of creating this alliance that you are talking about.
Yes.
They bought off the leadership of the ANC with giving them shares in what actually were marginal companies
Mm.
in the scheme of things of Africana capital.
Yes.
I mean, Metropolitan Life, which is what Sanlam used to create New Africa Investment Limited,
Mm.
the heart of black economic empowerment, well, was a marginal company in the scheme of Sanlam.
Yes. Yes.
It was a life, first, it was listed on its own, and secondly, 85% of its life policyholders were African and colored. So it was a marginal company.
Yes. Yes.
And they used that marginal company to bring in leaders of the ANC, of the PAC, literally to buy them off.
Yeah.
And then that became the modus operandi of big business, was that we, big business, we want to buy off these new rulers so that they suppress competition
Yes.
and so on and so forth, and leave us to operate the way we have been operating all along.
Yeah.
So black economic empowerment, many people think it was created by the ANC. Then the ANC, I was in the research department of the ANC in exile. We never had any policy of black economic empowerment. This was handed over to the ANC by Sanlam.
Okay. And so, and just an interesting point, given that I know polling quite well. We asked a question in June of this year. Who do you feel benefits most from affirmative action? And can you guess? So we gave five options. We said the poor, the middle class, elites, the politically connected, and business owners. And on that question, I think it was 82% of people picked either one of three, which was, I think 50% picked politically connected, another 12% picked, another 20% picked the elites, and then another 12% picked business owners. And so what's very interesting just on that point is that the understanding that there's this kind of unholy alliance based
Mm,
around affirmative action has actually crept its way into the public opinion of ordinary South Africans,
mm,
which I think is also kind of goes to show that what might be have pushed people to the point of giving up entirely on the ANC. That one of these ideas that the ANC today fights tooth and nail for is seen as what it really is, a kind of elite enrichment scheme
yeah.
by the people who are meant to keep the ANC in power.
It is an elite enrichment scheme,
Mm.
the black economic. That's why the numbers that you are giving, all they are telling you is that the politically connected, who are the people in government, who are the heads of the ANC, the heads of parastatals,
Mm.
the big business, where your Sanlams of this world, they benefit. All of them. There's a third category. They are all enmeshed together.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, and so I think let's stick on the point of the ANC, because I think we've laid out quite well how the ANC's got here, that you've got this idea that we're at the end stage of nationalism in the country, and that idea as like kind of the monolithic idea is dying out, and so we're then that therefore that means we must be in a political transition, kind of definitionally, right? So what do you think, where do you think this political transition goes, and where do you think it leaves something like the ANC, or just the tradition, maybe the traditional political players in South Africa, in democratic South Africa?
Sure, that's what's called a $1 million question.
Yes.
So for me, the ANC is on its way out.
Mm,
Um, your surveys, and you guys do lots of surveys.
mm,
Essentially, they are giving the same message
yeah.
that the ANC is on its way out. The second most important party is the DA.
Mm,
So the question is, what is the future of the DA?
yes.
So let's forget the ANC. The ANC is the past and it's petering out. They are fighting amongst themselves and it's fragmenting.
Mm,
If you look at all the new parties that are there, most of them are, are set up by people from the ANC.
yes.
MK Party, EFF, Rise Mzansi, what have you. There are
Yes.
so many of them, but they
Okay.
have ANC roots. So the ANC is dying and it's splintering.
Yes.
So the question is, what is the future of the DA? So that is really the big question in South Africa when we're talking about the DA.
Yeah. And
Now,
what?
I have no crystal ball.
Mm.
Maybe John Steenhuisen has, or Helen,
Yes.
with the two of them, but I haven't got one. But the key question in South Africa today is, what is the future of the DA?
And on that point, I was watching you speak. I can't remember on which platform, but a point that you made, which I thought was I've been thinking about for since I heard that point, was that you said that the capitalist class in South Africa doesn't really have a voice, and that it's an unfortunate thing that it seems as though the DA comes from come from a similar route of being a primarily middle class party, and it's continue will one's great fear is, if everything that we've laid out here is true, is that if the DA is in fact a middle class party, that the incentives when it's in governance are not that different from the ANC in governance, and it means that we might just have a kind of you know switch over what looks like a political change, but really is a
Mm.
movement, a very small movement. But then on the other hand, I'm sure if we were to have John sitting here with us, he would be at pains to tell us about how the DA comes from the kind of classic liberal tradition in South Africa, and how, we had the Helen Suzman and the Progressive Party, then then the Federalist Party, and then the PFP, and we have this whole long lineage, and
Yeah.
that the ANC doesn't have that similar kind of rooting, and in fact the classically liberal aspects of the DA, which are the parts that one hopes get the most attention, will win out. Um, so do you think that the DA is capable of, and to tie this back into the point, your point about the capitalist class in South Africa, do you think that there is enough incentive for the DA to actually live up to and fulfills and to be a kind of proto-capitalist party, or
Well, you see, the challenge of the DA,
mm,
and as you rightly point out, it sees itself as a liberal party.
mm,
Um, eh, that's its historic root.
yes,
But liberalism in South Africa is an English-speaking white ideology. It's
mm,
not an Afrikaans ideology. It's not an African ideology. It's not a colored ideology. Now, that is the majority of the population of South Africa.
yes,
So, an English liberal ideology is not mainstream ideology in South Africa. It's a marginal.
yes,
So, first, the DA has to learn that liberalism in South Africa is not core.
mm,
It's a marginal ideology, which means if they want a big vote of South Africans, they have to move away from liberalism.
mm,
That's point number one. Point number two, liberalism, the West is moving away from liberalism.
yeah,
Look at Donald Trump. Donald Trump is no liberal.
yes,
He's moved away from liberalism. So the DA's role models, like the United States, like the United Kingdom, They are moving away from those ideas. Even Germany, I mean, the biggest party in Germany, or if not the second biggest party, is Alternative for Germany.
Yeah.
And that's not a liberal
No, not
party.
at all.
So this is the challenge the DA faces, is that it has a marginal ideology in the philosophies or political mindsets of the people of South Africa across race. And why is it only the English-speaking white South Africa? Because they've never been colonized.
Yes.
They are the only people in this country who were not colonized. They were helping the colonizer. So they have the colonizers' ideology, which was liberalism, but it only applied in England. It didn't apply in the colonies.
Mm.
And they inherited the liberalism of the British colonialists from England. But nobody in South Africa is a liberal.
Yeah.
The Afrikaners are not liberal. The colors are not liberal. The Indians are not liberal. The Africans are not liberal. So now, if the DA is now the second largest party in the country, there are lots of changes if it wants to become a majority party, which it has to make. One of which is it has to shed liberalism. And I don't know if they are willing to or they understand that. First, do they understand that liberalism is a marginal ideology in the body politic of South Africa? That's what they have to learn.
Mm. Okay, so you said that the DA has to make a number of changes, and you outlined that number one is to kind of first recognizing that liberalism is a marginal ideology, and then second, moving away from it. But what do you think should the DA move towards to be successful in South Africa, but successful politically, so to get voters to come on side, but then also to be successful as a government in South Africa, right? Because one might claim that it would be very good for, say, the DA to move towards a more nationalistic character, because the body politic in South Africa understands nationalism.
Yeah, but
But
they've rejected it. So
yes.
going there won't help them.
Okay. And so
The body politic of South Africa has had 150 years of nationalism in one form or another. So going there won't help them. That's
Okay.
why EFF, and MK parties,
yeah.
which are still embracing a strong version of African nationalism, they're small parties.
Yeah. And so where should the DA then go?
Well, I have no idea.
Okay.
Well, at least I have I've made the point that liberalism is not an asset to the DA. They have to jettison. Now, what do they replace that liberalism with? It has to be some form of developmentalism, because we have 40% unemployment.
Yeah.
Now, that's a big part of the voting population of South Africa.
Yeah.
So if you want their vote, you have to have a developmental philosophy and policies that incorporate them into the economy.
Yeah.
Instead of them marginalized where they are. So the DA that's one of the things it has to do. It has to have some kind of a developmental, both ideology and practice.
Yeah.
Now, one of the core elements of developmentalism in South Africa is suppressing the consumption of the middle class, especially of the African middle class.
Yeah.
That's how Asia developed, by the way. Asia, Southeast Asia, and East Asia developed by suppressing the consumption of the elite and growing investment. That's how and that's what has to happen in South Africa. Now, is the DA going to be able to suppress this huge consumption of the African middle class who occupy the state? Well, they have to.
Yeah.
If they want to be the ruler of South Africa or the dominant party, they have to. Now, how they do it, well, that's why they are the leaders of the day, and I'm not. They have to find a solution.
And to stick on the DA, and maybe to just as a point of interest, given that we're sitting in the city itself, we have Helen Zille running for Johannesburg. And what do you think that she is capable of winning the city? And do you think that that does anything to the DA's electoral prospects if she does win it?
Yes, I think she has a good, chance of winning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the, the ANC voters, let's say in the township, in the original, they are disillusioned with the ANC,
Yeah.
and for very good reasons. So, and then the middle class of all races in the suburbs
Mm.
are also disillusioned, except for the civil servants who are part of the
Yes.
state now. But that's a minority. The big part of the middle class and the elite in Gauteng
Mm.
are in the private sector, not
Yes.
in the state sector. So that just on those two equations, it gives uh, Helen Zille a good chance, I think.
And if she wins, do you think that there's a potential that she can catalyze that into ensuring that the DA might, without let's say moving towards a more a broader church ideology, just getting to kind of witness successful governance, assuming that that's what she achieves, maybe that helps to propel the DA to the top of South Africa's political ladder without some of the things that you suggest?
Well, if she wins, if she is to be able to make any difference,
Mm.
she has to transfer the budget of Johannesburg from salaries of the upper class or the upper elite within the employment
Mm.
of Johannesburg to investment in infrastructure and all those issues, which
Yeah.
means she has to start to implement the cutting of the African middle class salaries,
Yes.
who are the majority of the public service
Mm.
in the municipality of Johannesburg.
Mm.
Now, that is a challenge. I hope she understands that will be her first challenge, is to cut the salaries of this group and transfer those resources to not to consumption by the poor, but to improving the environment for investment,
Mm. Yeah.
which will then provide jobs for the poor.
You'll be happy to know that in my interview with her, and my conversation when we were talking about Johannesburg and Cape Town, she made 2 points which I think you would appreciate. One was that she said if you take the capital budget in Cape Town as a quantum, there's more Cape Town invests more in their capital budget than the capital budgets of all metros in the rest of the country combined.
Okay.
So that's the one
That's
point
good news.
on the
Yeah.
investment.
Mm.
And then the other point that she makes is that she says, well, when you look at Johannesburg's budget, as Joburg as a metro spends the lowest amount on maintenance as a proportion of the budget. And so her two big things are, increase the capital budget and increase the maintenance budgets. And she says, and one of the things that she points out that she would hope to get rid of is the duplications of jobs across the city and then the municipal levels, where you've got a lot of jobs being done by two people because it's a means of ensuring employment.
Yes, look, those are all the things that have to be happening. But the net effect has to be reducing the resources that go into middle class consumption
Mm.
and increasing resources into capital expenditure and all those.
Yeah, so it's essentially a kind of micro example
Yeah.
of the macro South African
Well,
issue.
yes, that is it's a, and ironically, that would be an indication of what the DA would do if it then controlled the government.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. And so I think we one of the themes that's run through our conversation today has been this kind of question of transition and the change in South Africa, whatever is happening, we can see that the country is changing. We just don't know where it's going
Yeah.
yet. And so I'd like to end with a discussion about what South Africa should hope to aim for in its changes. So I'll start this by making a claim, and you can disagree with this claim or not. But I think, given that South Africa is a free and open democracy, you can kind of classify it as a part of the Western family of nations, because the West defined by its modern West is defined by its liberal democracy. And so, if if that is the case, that South Africa is a part of the kind of broader Western liberal tradition, should South Africa aspire to be more of a European Western country in which it has a very big social welfare net, high income tax in order to pay for the social welfare net, and a very large middle class, but with low inequality, because there's not necessarily the kind of a massive class of ultra rich and then a massive class of poor in Europe? It's much more marginalized around the middle. Or should we aim to be more American in our democracy, which with a much freer market, um, lower income tax, a smaller welfare net, but thereby a much higher inequality, and creating a big class of super rich elite. So what do you think South Africa should aim to go down the European model or to go down the American model?
Okay. South
Or,
Africa is part of the West, not for the reasons that you are giving.
oh, interesting. Okay.
What makes South Africa part of the West is that it's the only country in Africa
Mm,
that belongs what used to be called the New World.
mm,
The New World were the countries that were carved out of the Americas after Columbus.
mm.
They became the New World.
Yes, yes.
What characterized the New World was transfer of free population from Europe to the Americas
Mm,
and transfer of enslaved population from Africa to the Americas.
mm,
That created the New World. In Africa, there are only two countries that belong to the New World. It's South Africa and Mauritius.
yes.
So South Africa and Mauritius are Western countries because they belong to New World countries. That's
Mm,
what makes them Western, not democracy and all those bells. They are democratic,
mm,
but what makes them is because they are New World countries.
yes.
So the characteristics of South Africa are closer to the United States, which is a New World country.
Mm,
We are closer to Brazil or Chile or Jamaica. These are New World countries
mm,
than we are to China, Ethiopia, Nigeria. Although slavery in Nigeria was export of people.
yes.
In South Africa, it was import of slaves
Yes.
from Asia and Africa. And it was genocide against the native population.
Mm,
That's a characteristic of the New World.
yeah.
So South Africa has all these attributes. So the most successful New World country is the United States. But Haiti, which actually abolished slavery before the United States,
Mm,
is the least successful New World country.
yeah.
So we are in that spectrum between the United States and Haiti.
Yeah.
That's where South Africa is sitting. We are not a European country. Europe never had slavery.
Yes.
So we're not like Europe. So those who think South Africa can become like Europe, we can't become like Europe.
Yeah.
Because Europe is a totally different history. Europe and Africa and Asia, they belong to what we call the old world.
Mm, yes.
But South Africa was carved off that old world and became part of the new world. So it's not as if we have an option.
Mhm.
Our scenarios are scenarios of new world. And those, then you have to look at, as I say, the most successful part of the new world is the United States, and the least successful is Haiti. And then in between you have Chile, you have Argentina, you have all the Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados,
Yeah.
Mexico. Those are your new world countries.
Yes.
So that's what we should be looking at. It. Who are we closest with? South Africa is, incidentally, in terms of how its history evolved, is very close to the Andean countries in the New World,
Mm.
which was Bolivia and Peru. It's
Okay.
very close to that. The indigenous population in those survived relatively,
Mm.
so it's stronger. It's the same in South Africa. The indigenous population survived
Mm.
and it's stronger. In the United States, the indigenous population didn't survive.
Wiped out. Yeah.
It got wiped out. So, but we have the same history. In Jamaica, it was wiped out.
Mm.
There are no Caribs
Yeah.
left.
Yeah.
So we have to start to think of ourselves as who we are. We are not we can't model ourselves on Europe.
Yeah.
We have to work on the models of the new world because those are still very potent.
So with that in mind, then could I say, and I really would hate to put words in your mouth because they'd be far less eloquent. But can I then say that what South Africa should that you would think then that South Africa should aim to take the things that made America great and try to implement it here. And one of the things that Americans primarily say about this is that it's the idea of America that is a kind of pull yourselves up by your bootstraps, the kind of ultimate freedom that and having that American idea is what allows this multi-ethnic, multiracial society to be so as prosperous as it is, because you just have to buy into the American idea in order to be American. And there's nothing, and so we should in South Africa try to abandon kind of the ethnic components of our identity and move towards the kind of American ideal of we we're all our own individuals and everyone should work as hard as possible to make the best version of themselves.
Yeah, I think that in part that's correct. But the real secret to America's success
Mm.
is its investment in human capital.
Yes.
There's a massive The United States makes massive investment in the human capital of the population.
Yes.
That's why it has the top universities in the world are in the United States.
Yeah.
Your Harvards, your Columbias, your Stanfords, and what have you. There is investment in human capital. That's the secret of American success.
Mhm.
So, so for us, if we follow the same route, we won't go wrong.
Well, thank you so much for this incredibly fascinating conversation today,
Thank
Mr.
you. Thanks for
Mbeki.
coming.
And all I can say is I hope that South Africa does move down the path to become a success.
I think it will. I think it will.
I've been Gabriel Makin, and this has been Talking Sense. Thank you.